You're all welcome to today's news analysis. If you care about Nigeria, elections, and who really controls power, this one is for you. Please, if you haven't already, like this video, follow this page, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the real breakdowns, not noise, not gossip, but facts and clear thinking. Now let's get straight into it. Because right now, three big things are shaking Nigerian politics at the same time. And when you connect them together, the picture becomes very clear. This issue is simple, but powerful. The African Democratic Congress, ADC, is saying one thing very clearly. Pass the law. That is all. According to ADC National Chairman, David Mark, lawmakers should stop speaking for INEC. Their job is not to decide what INEC can or cannot do. Their job is to make the law. David Mark's response comes as a direct pushback against comments and actions linked to the leadership of the National Assembly, particularly Senate President Godswill Akpabio, over the proposed amendment of the Electoral Act. At the center of the disagreement is the issue of electronic transmission of election results, a matter that has remained sensitive and controversial in Nigeria's electoral process. Mark's position is firm and deliberate. He argues that when lawmakers begin to speak on behalf of INEC, they cross a clear constitutional line. INEC is an independent body, established to conduct elections and decide how best to carry out its duties within the law. The National Assembly, on the other hand, exists to make laws, not to prejudge the capacity or readiness of INEC. In Mark's view, the correct approach is straightforward. The National Assembly should pass a law that permits electronic transmission of results. Once that law exists, INEC should then be allowed to determine whether real-time transmission is feasible, safe, and effective. Anything outside this order, he insists, undermines institutional independence and weakens public confidence. This argument has struck a chord with many Nigerians because it reflects a long-standing frustration with how electoral reforms are handled. Over the years, debates around electronic transmission have often ended with delays, conditional approvals, or vague language that leaves room for confusion during elections. For critics, this uncertainty has been a major source of mistrust. ADC's position is that the country has moved beyond endless debate. Technology is already a part of daily life in Nigeria, from banking to communication, and elections should not be treated as an exception. The party maintains that refusing to clearly legislate electronic transmission sends the wrong signal to voters, especially in a democracy still working to strengthen credibility. David Mark also emphasizes that the demand for electronic transmission is not a partisan request. It is a public expectation. Civil society groups, election observers, and ordinary voters have repeatedly called for a transparent system where results are transmitted directly, reducing the risk of interference between polling units and collation centers. From ADC's perspective, when lawmakers hesitate or attempt to limit this process, it raises questions about their intentions. Mark stops short of accusing anyone directly, but his words are carefully chosen to reflect growing public suspicion. He argues that democracy functions best when rules are clear, predictable, and uniformly applied. Another critical element of Mark's statement is accountability. By passing a clear law, the National Assembly places responsibility where it belongs. If INEC says it can transmit results electronically, it must then prepare, invest, and deliver. If it says it cannot, it must explain why, backed by facts and timelines. This clarity, ADC believes, benefits everyone. The party also warns against using INEC as a shield for political decisions. According to Mark, it is unfair for lawmakers to claim they are protecting INEC from pressure while simultaneously denying it the legal tools to innovate. True protection, he argues, comes from granting independence, not restricting options. The broader implication of this debate goes beyond one election cycle. Nigeria's electoral system has often been criticized for being reactive rather than proactive. Reforms are usually discussed after controversies arise, rather than being implemented early enough to prevent them. ADC's stance attempts to reverse this pattern by calling for decisive action now, not later. Public reaction to Mark's comment suggests that many Nigerians see this as a test of sincerity. For voters, electronic transmission has become symbolic. It represents fairness, speed, and reduced manipulation. While it may not solve every electoral problem, it is viewed as a strong step toward restoring trust. In essence, ADC is drawing a clear boundary. Lawmakers should focus on their constitutional role and resist the temptation to manage electoral outcomes through legal ambiguity. By insisting on a clean, enabling law, the party is aligning itself with a broader demand for transparency and institutional respect. As the debate continues within the National Assembly, the pressure is increasing. For many Nigerians, the question is no longer whether electronic transmission is possible, but whether those in power are willing to allow a system that limits their control. This is why David Mark's message resonates. It is not loud, but it is firm. It does not attack personalities, but it challenges the process. And in a political environment where trust is fragile, the distinction matters. Now let's go deeper, because this is where the issue becomes more sensitive and more political. Inside the African Democratic Congress, a serious disagreement is unfolding over zoning, and it is not a small internal debate. It is a conflict that touches the core of Nigeria's power balance and could determine the party's direction ahead of the 2027 general election. Zoning, though not written into the constitution, has long shaped Nigerian politics. It is an informal agreement meant to manage diversity, reduce tension, and ensure a sense of inclusion between the North and the South. For years, major political parties have relied on this understanding to decide where presidential tickets should go. The current argument within ADC is based on this principle. Supporters of zoning insist that the presidency should remain in the South until 2031. Their reasoning is clear. In 2023, power shifted from the North to the South when Bola Tinubu succeeded Muhammadu Buhari. According to zoning logic, the South is expected to complete 2 terms before power rotates again. From this perspective, any attempt to open the ticket to the North in 2027 is seen as a violation of balance. Those who hold this view argue that ignoring zoning risks reopening old wounds and deepening distrust among regions. For them, zoning is not about exclusion but about stability. Within ADC, some voices have gone further, suggesting that the party's presidential ticket should not only be zoned to the South but also be uncontested. They believe this would send a strong signal of unity and discipline, positioning the party as one that respects national balance at a time of growing division. However, this position is facing strong resistance. At the center of that resistance is Atiku Abubakar. The former vice president, who is from the North, is opposed to zoning within ADC. His stance is that the presidential ticket should be open to every Nigerian, regardless of region. According to this view, competence, vision, and national appeal should matter more than geography. Atiku supporters argue that zoning limits choice and weakens internal democracy. They say Nigeria's problems are too deep to be solved by rotational agreements and that the country needs the best possible leadership, wherever it comes from. For them, zoning is outdated and restrictive. This disagreement has exposed deeper tensions within ADC. While the party presents itself as an alternative to the dominant political forces, it is now facing the same structural challenges that have troubled older parties for decades. Balancing inclusion, ambition, and unity has proven difficult. Political analysts note that this zoning dispute is not happening in isolation. It reflects broader national anxiety about power distribution, fairness, and trust. In a country where elections often heighten ethnic and regional sentiments, decisions around zoning carry heavy consequences. The timing of this debate is also important. With 2027 approaching, parties are under pressure to position themselves early. Internal clarity is seen as essential for building momentum, attracting allies, and reassuring voters. Prolonged internal conflict, on the other hand, risks weakening credibility. Within ADC, there are concerns that the zoning disagreement could lead to fragmentation if not carefully managed. Some members fear that insisting on zoning could alienate influential northern figures. Others worry that abandoning zoning could cost the party support in the South, where expectations around power rotation remain strong. There is also a strategic dimension. ADC is trying to grow beyond a fringe party and present itself as a serious national alternative. How it handles this dispute will signal whether it can manage internal democracy without tearing itself apart. Observers point out that Atiku's opposition to zoning is consistent with his long-standing political position. He has repeatedly argued for open competition and has resisted rotational arrangements in the past. This consistency gives his stance credibility among supporters, even as it fuels controversy. Still, the question many Nigerians are asking is not just about ADC's internal rules. It is about what kind of political culture the country wants to encourage. One based on negotiated balance, or one based purely on open competition. As discussions continue within the party, no final decision has been reached. What is clear, however, is that the zoning dispute has already changed the tone of ADC's internal politics. It has forced members to confront difficult questions about identity, fairness, and power. In the end, this debate is less about individuals and more about direction. Whether ADC chooses zoning or openness, the choice will shape its alliances, its public image, and its relevance in the next election cycle. Attention has now shifted to a new political development that is sending signals across the country and reshaping calculations ahead of the 2027 general election. Supporters of Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, the national leader of the new Nigeria People's Party, have openly proposed a joint presidential ticket pairing Peter Obi with Kwankwaso. The proposal, announced by representatives of various support groups in Kano, reflects growing frustration with Nigeria's current state of insecurity and economic hardship. Speaking on behalf of the groups, Abba Sadoki Gwale described the idea as a response to widespread suffering and declining public confidence in the political system. According to him, many Nigerians are no longer interested in recycled promises or power struggles among established political elites. Instead, there is a growing demand for leadership that can address daily realities such as hunger, unemployment, and insecurity. The proposed Obi-Kwankwaso alliance is being framed as a strategic and national project rather than a narrow political arrangement. Supporters argue that the combination brings together two strong political bases. Peter Obi commands significant support across the south and among urban voters, while Kwankwaso retains deep grassroots influence in the north, particularly in Kano and neighboring states. Advocates of the alliance believe this balance could create a broad coalition capable of challenging the ruling party. They point to the shifting mood of the electorate, noting that many voters are increasingly driven by economic pressure rather than traditional party loyalty. Rising living costs, food shortages, and security concerns have reshaped political priorities across regions. Gwale emphasized that the proposal is not tied to any specific political platform. According to him, the ticket could emerge under any party that aligns with the shared goal of rescuing the country from its current difficulties. This flexibility is seen as an attempt to keep the focus on substance rather than party labels. The suggestion of such an alliance has drawn national attention because of its potential impact on existing political calculations. Analysts say it introduces uncertainty into an already fluid political landscape. For the ruling All Progressives Congress, the idea represents a possible consolidation of opposition strength that could complicate re-election strategies. It also places pressure on other major political figures, particularly those with presidential ambitions. With Atiku Abubakar and Bola Tinubu representing established power blocs, the emergence of a new alliance narrative highlights growing public appetite for alternatives. Even if the alliance does not materialize, the discussion alone signals changing expectations. Supporters of the proposal argue that both Obi and Kwankwaso have consistently spoken about policies centered on ordinary Nigerians. They highlight Obi's focus on fiscal discipline and economic reform, alongside Kwankwaso's emphasis on education, social welfare, and grassroots development. According to them, these shared priorities make cooperation possible. At the same time, the proposal has revived debates around political trust and commitment. Questions have been raised about whether such an alliance can overcome differences in political style, past rivalries, and party structures. Supporters insist that the urgency of Nigeria's challenges demands compromise and maturity. Addressing rumors that Kwankwaso was negotiating a return to the ruling party, Gwale dismissed such claims as false and misleading. He maintained that Kwankwaso's decisions are guided by consultations with his supporters and a commitment to their interests. According to him, any suggestion of a move driven by personal gain misunderstands the political dynamics at play. He also stressed that Kwankwaso continues to enjoy strong grassroots backing despite recent political realignments in Kano State. This support, he said, gives him leverage and relevance in any national political discussion. For his supporters, remaining independent and principled is seen as a strength rather than a weakness. Political observers note that the Kwankwaso proposal reflects a broader shift in how alliances are being imagined. Rather than relying solely on party structures, political movements are increasingly shaped by voter sentiment, regional balance, and shared grievances. This trend mirrors growing dissatisfaction with traditional party politics. As 2027 approaches, attention is expected to remain fixed on how this momentum translates into concrete action. Whether the alliance becomes formal or remains a strategic idea, it has already influenced the national conversation. It has forced political actors to reassess assumptions about voter behavior and opposition strength. What is clear is that the proposal has tapped into a deep sense of urgency among Nigerians. The language used by its supporters is less about ambition and more about survival. In a climate marked by insecurity and economic strain, such messages are resonating across social and regional lines. In this context, the Kwankwaso alliance represents more than a possible ticket. It reflects a search for direction at a time when many Nigerians feel the country is at a crossroads. How this energy is channeled will shape the tone and trajectory of the next election cycle.